Good morning, and thank you for coming to hear about the technology of energy approach. Let me preface that I am not a professional healthcare provider. I am not a healthcare person. This is going to be information that I have acquired since 1989 and information on what I've used since 1989 and have given to my friends since that time, and to let people know that they have something available that they've never tried before that just might be the answer to things they're looking for with what they're doing. You can integrate this technology with anything that you're doing, so anything that's natural is highly recommended. And I do want to thank Pahrump Wellness Center and Justin Cannut for allowing me to use his facility to give this information to people, and for Anthony Greco for taking this video and allowing it to be seen by others so that we can actually duplicate this information to all the people that need it. So let me start with a little explanation of why I got started, and then we'll go into what this is about and try to help you relate a little bit to your energy anatomy and the power of it. In 1983, I was in a very, very serious car accident. My injuries from that accident included a brain injury from the middle of my forehead to the side of my temple that destroyed the brain. And my diagnosis from that injury alone was I was not going to live. There was too much of the brain that was damaged. And if I did survive that night, then the prognosis was that I would never tie my shoes again. And needless to say, I woke up. But the other part of the story is yet to come. Other injuries were a broken collarbone. My collarbone was broken here, and I weighed maybe 120 pounds when this happened, so the collarbone was pretty prevalent. And it would pop out ever so often and rest up against the artery in the neck from this side. So if I coughed, it would produce a plethora of blood. I mean, I would hit a wall across the room with just blood. And doctors would just go berserk when this would happen in their office, and I would go for cough medicine to stop this. I was using all the traditional medicine, and I don't forsake traditional medicine. I'm not saying replace this with what your provider can give you. What you use is, in my opinion, your choice, but I do not profess that you forsake anything that you're using or any medical advice or medical medicines that your doctor gives you. Once again, I'm not a medical professional. But the other part of the injury were the flesh from my arm, from the inside of my elbow. You can see a little bit of a scar now. At one time, this scar was huge. It goes all the way to the back of my shoulder where all the flesh was filleted, and they had to reconstruct the entire arm. Of course, ribs were broken. My knee was caught in the dashboard of the car. That's why I didn't get thrown out of the car when it was turning. A policeman behind the car that spoke with me after I woke up from this accident explained that the car rolled side to side, end to end, more than 8 times, and he just quit calling and called Flight for Life. So it was a serious accident. And when you have those kinds of injuries, there's things that come along with them as time goes by. And these are the things that led up to my friends bringing this information to me about the formula. And I had been in so much pain, I wasn't able to sleep. Scar tissue in my arm had built up so bad that it was like a board, and the doctors were talking about surgery to remove the scar tissue. My memory loss had become worse. I was diagnosed with short-term memory loss. Just before I found these in 1989, I was diagnosed with the onset of Alzheimer's. And I would be coming home from work, and I would not even know where I was. I wouldn't know the car, I wouldn't know the street, and wouldn't have any idea of what was even going on, and I would just tell myself, don't be afraid, just kind of relax, it'll be okay. And then something would click, and I would go, oh my God, I have to turn around and go back. One time I was almost into Arizona, and before I knew where I was. And so, okay, well, I was getting pretty bad. And my friends came to me. I had been a healthy person my whole life. I had used pretty much vegetarian, actually, and I used a lot of vitamins and herbs. I was brought up with natural remedies, and so everything was just gradually going downhill. And when my friends brought me this technology, I said, well, what is it? They said, well, I can't explain it, but it works. And I said, okay, let me know more about it. Well, I don't have any information on it. What kind of information can I get? Well, I don't know. Where do you get it? And well, I don't know the guy. And I said, well, I'll do some research. So somebody that I met in Vegas, where I lived at the time, was telling me about Dr. Gerber's vibrational medicine. And so I picked up the book, and I started reading on it and thought, well, you know, there might be a little bit of an energy pattern going on here in the body. So I thought, well, what is that? What's an energy pattern? What is that all about? Then I heard about Robert O. Becker. He's got 18 books, at least at that time, 18 books on the market. He was a professor in 3 universities, and his field was the body electric, the anatomy of the body being electrical. And so I picked up a couple of his books. These are the 2 that I've kept through the years. Is Body Current and Body Electric. It's not the Body Current. There's another book by that name. This is Body Current, and this is Body Electric and Body Current. And it really helped me relate to what the energy anatomy in the body was. I didn't quite know how this was going to work with this Body Electric. And then I picked up a book about the subtle body. That's the subtle energy body. And we all hear about this. We hear about essential oils. They work great. They work within a top layer of energy. And and it does a lot of good. It can go through all of these molecules that we are aware of and do a lot of good. And of course I have this book, which has nothing to do with the product or the technology. It's just a great book, and I think everybody should get a copy of it online. It's Casino Dealer Triggerman by Anthony Greco, and it's really, really good reading. Fast reading, good reading. So anyway, that's my plug for Anthony. And thank you very much. I just want to read a little bit before I touch base on the formula. They are the energy formula and how they work within our anatomy. This will put it into perspective. And this is written by a scientist that it's an excerpt of what he was talking about in this field. And he says energy is the best of both worlds, the biochemical and the energetic. As we age, basic critical elements are no longer available for bodily processes to occur. We've all heard how the body slows down, the negative hydrogen in the body goes away, our hormones begin to change as we get older. Everything begins to stop as we get older through certain stages. So that's what he's talking about bodily processes. These basic elements are needed to sustain a healthy, ailment-free body. Sadly, we can no longer obtain these elements in our diets since they are no longer present. Various biological systems are thus adversely impacted. These bodily systems will continue to function, yet not to their fullest extent. When one is younger, and that's when I was a younger kid, the bodily systems could compensate one for the other. But as we become older, this compensation dissipates due to severe depletion of all of them. Energy has these critical elements that we're lacking. These have critical elements that we are lacking. They are readily absorbed and are quickly available to start rebuilding the foundation of systematic integrity. This is the integrity of the energy anatomy. When we were younger, this is the integrity of that anatomy. When we're born, this is that integrity. Do you have any questions so far? Okay. Another critical aspect of these missing elements are energetic. Without these elements present, there is no longer a frequency, resonance vibration. Our bodies operate within a frequency, an element of frequency, and it was explained to me by the scientists that developed these to visualize a cell. And these cells are connected by an invisible cord, like a cell phone is connected to a tower for you to communicate. These cells communicate that way. And if this becomes dysfunctional, the frequency of this cell changes. But it can no longer communicate with the other cell. And so that cell says, hey, where are you? I don't know what to do without you. We have to work together, but they can't talk. So something else happens. There becomes another dysfunction. And this cell splits. You know, we all learned in biology and science, these cells split. So now they split and this cord is still missing. So these become a dysfunction. And they split and it becomes a dysfunction. So you can imagine the spread of dysfunction. What does that mean? How do we relate to what that means? Broken bones, injuries. The dysfunctions of these developed scar tissue. The injury was clearly not caused by scar tissue. It didn't involve scar tissue. It became involved. And those dysfunctions became that scar tissue. The bones developed bone spurs, the broken bones, the rib cage, everything that was broken developed bone spurs. The back injury, I forgot to mention that one, developed bone spurs. So as these energies go along and separate and become dysfunctional, we get these dysfunctional results. They start within that energy anatomy. So that might help you relate a little bit on what's going on and not sound so much like jumbo information, stuff that you don't relate to. So that's why I'm doing this. Okay, the energetic aspect of these elements we're talking about are also included in the energy formula to make them even more readily available, the energy patterns more readily available. And I can tell you about energy patterns. You can relate to that beautiful voice that can reach such a high pitch that it breaks a crystal, it breaks glass. That's because they are the same frequency. So if you have a correct frequency and you introduce this correct frequency long enough, it will shatter the dysfunction. It will just break it. So your result, you might feel physically, this did not have anything to do with your physical result. It has everything to do with what caused it. So if you reverse that physical result backwards in that energy anatomy where it began, you no longer have that result. If you correct that energy pattern that created that dysfunction, that physical result, you actually are reversing all of this dysfunction where it began. And that's information that I've passed out for people to read, that you can get more of a grasp on what's going on. All right, it says here, what can one expect to see by using energy formula? And it depends on how weakened one's bodily systems are. the worse you are, the more of a result you have, like my memory loss, which, by the way, is pretty good right now. Even though I am a little bit older and it should be occurring, I'm doing pretty good. But even with that kind of a long-term result, it worked pretty quick on me. Within 3 months, I had my memory back, and I could feel that. Once I got it back, then I realized there was a disconnect between the emotional and the mental. And those are things that we grow up with, we just take for granted. We decide, at a very early age, we understand body language. I can tell when you're upset or when you're happy, just by the way you look, by the way you behave, the way you carry yourself. Those are things that we take for granted. Those are emotional things that we're collecting images of in our brain. We're collecting all of these memories and all of these colors, everything about us, into our brain. If we separate that, I can no longer determine if you're angry or happy. I forget what that means because it's not there. My brain is not letting me pick that up automatically like we do. Right? Like you're paying attention. I can tell you're paying attention. But the brain is recording that for me. And we learn how to do this from birth. Everything we do, the tone of our voice, certain words we use, when you're happy, when you're mad, when you're, just talking, those things are recorded and put into the brain, and we just take it for granted. So when I got my memory back, I realized that's what was missing. Now I can do it. Now I have control of it. And we know when a cell is destroyed, it doesn't grow back. So I cannot actually say I'm brain dead, because my brain molecules, they're gone. That part of my brain was jelly. That's the thinking part of my brain that was destroyed. But I'm not having too much of a problem. I don't think. It could just be me being delusional, but I think that I'm doing pretty good. But the worse the injury was, the faster the result I felt. So when that statement says that, it depends on...
Are you going to get into how, especially when you're first starting out, how intense your injury is or minor, how to know how much to take, how often, how...
I will. And I'm glad you're paying attention to this because those are the next steps that we're going to talk about. So the worse the injury is, the worse the problem is, usually the faster result is going to be. There are some things that are really, really serious, like your cancers, your diabetes, your different diseases, your different results that are going to take longer. They took you a lifetime to develop. They've been in your energy anatomy, and there's certain things about your lifestyle that have taken that long to produce that result. So you may have to use the formula a little bit longer than she would, or she might have to, get results tomorrow. You might not get them for 3 years. Everyone is different. So the different formulas are because everything is a different frequency. If you send your blood test in, and I'm sure Jason or Justin can explain this better than I, but this is how it was explained very simply. When I have a blood test drawn and sent out to a lab, there's not a little red flag down there going, hey, she's got memory loss or she's got diabetes or whatever. There's no flag waving. There's a pattern. Everything has this vibrational pattern, this frequency. And that's what these are. They're individual frequencies that have been identified when medicine was first thought of. When they started watching things in a lab, they knew about these frequencies. We are diagnosed with frequencies. MRIs are frequencies. They're developed with vibrational frequencies. You get an image because of it. Any kind of an X-ray is a frequency. It comes back to you. But as far as when to use them is an individual synopsis. And that's why I'm here. I help people because I've been using them so long and have so much information on them. But it's a big, big topic. and I'm going to get more into that. But we're going to be taking a break now because we need to upload this so other people can see it. I'll come back to you and we'll begin talking about the individual frequencies.